everybody. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Veronica Rivas. I'm part of the partnerships team of 1776, which means that I work closely with our campus partners. One of them is the National Association of Broadcasters, who are the ones who are hosting the class and who really made it possible and who allowed us to have this amazing group of experts that are going to be part of the panel. Really, to kick things off, we're excited about the class. We want to make it as interactive as possible, so ask any questions. We have a couple of folks that are on Skype. Hello, the virtual members over there. And so this is really an opportunity to learn about how to pitch to the media, ask questions. With that, I just want to introduce Sam Matheny, who's a EVP and Chief Technology Officer for the National Association of Broadcasters. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Really appreciate that. The NAB, or National Association of Broadcasters, represents full power television and radio stations across the United States with advocacy, education, and innovation. It's the innovation part of that has us involved with 1776, and we're really delighted to be here with you today and to put together a panel that we hope is going to build both educational understanding as well as lead to relationships. And so we hope that not only will you take part in the panel today, ask questions, get involved, but stay for the reception afterwards and get to know these folks and talk with them on a more personal level. So I just want to say thanks to Veronica and 1776. And now I want to turn it over to the Executive Director of Pilot, John Clark, to lead us through the discussion.
Absolutely. So I'm John. I'm the Executive Director of Pilot. Pilot is the innovation arm, the innovation initiative for NAB. And we're excited to be here. And I'm going to real quickly get out of the way and turn it over to our panelists because that's who you want to hear from. Couple things to keep in mind. We're going to go a few minutes here. First half of this is really going to be a lot of Q&A. I've got questions, but I'd prefer to have your questions, so I'm going to get them started with some questions and then take some from you guys, get it going, what you want to know. The second half we'll stop and understand we're going to do some live fire pitching. The notion of how do you pitch your story and let our panelists give you some feedback on that. So as you're listening to them, think about what your pitch might be. And be ready to get critiqued and get some feedback and some advice and some tips on that. So with that, we'll jump right in. I'll let these guys introduce themselves.
Hi, thanks for being here. My name is Stan Melton. I'm the Director of Creative Services at WJLA TV, ABC7, and News Channel 8 here in town. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Don, I'm Tommy McFly. I host the morning show on 94.7 Fresh FM, CBS Radio here in DC, and I do lifestyle reporting for WUSA 9, CBS affiliate on TV.
Hey, I'm Matt McFarland. I write about innovation and transportation at CNN.
And I'm Mitchel Miller. I'm the Senior News Director at WTOP. I guess the senior part's just because of my hair color. I'm not sure. But at any rate.
You still have hair.
I still have hair, that's true. Easy. I've been at WTOP for quite a while, but I've worked in a lot of other media, and I'm always really fascinated about the newest developments, so really excited to be here.
First question I'm going to ask and get us going. So when, in this context, particularly here at like 1776, everybody talks about a pitch. Well, we're talking about a different kind of pitch. So when we talk about pitching from a startup, usually you're trying to pitch to get some money, get some funding, get some introductions. In the context of today, we're talking about a pitch maybe toward media. So let's start there. When I say pitch, what does that mean to you? What is a pitch? What is a good pitch that comes to media? Who wants to take a shot at it here?
I'll go ahead and jump in because I get a lot of pitches every day. A pitch can come in any form, and with all the creative forms of media there are today, it doesn't have to be one thing or another. In the old days, it used to be a phone call. Sometimes it's an email. Now it can be a text. It can be a social media push. It can be any number of things that you want to make it. It's as creative as you want to make it be. The main thing is, though, you need to get to the decision makers, the people like myself who are trying to figure out what we're going to do every day. And you're going to hear a lot of us talking about how many pitches we get, but the main thing is to kind of cut through that clutter and try to figure out the best way to get your pitch in front of somebody who's actually making that kind of decision. I can get into that a little more detailed, but among the main things that you want to do is make it timely. You want to hook it to something that is happening right now or something that you know is about to happen or is really imminent. And I can give you some examples, I'll let everybody else go, of a very good pitch that I got today and a very bad pitch.
You use the term hook, and that's something that you'll hear in a newsroom. Is they'll actually talk about a hook. You know, what do you have in the news today that you can then associate with whatever there is of interest? So the term isn't used loosely. It's very important to find something that you can connect whatever story you're trying to tell to get somebody else interested in it. So I think that's very important. The creativity is a big deal. My background is creative, and what my team does is creative advertising tied to the news product. This has nothing to do with that, but the creative concept is really interesting. I had a friend who got a job a number of years ago at a hospital, and the way she did it, after trying for months to get the attention of the CEO, was to customize a what's the operation, the operation game. She customized the operation game to that specific hospital and had it sent to the CEO. He was so impressed with it that he had to talk to her. So that's something to think about. What can I do creatively to get this message to the right person, instead of just having it go to the receptionist or somebody at a desk that'll just disappear when they have thousands of things coming in on a daily basis.
And I think too, with pitching, who you're pitching, it's definitely getting the right message and the right idea to the right outlets. I'm more of the Taylor Swift beat than the murders, fires, and cats and trees. So I don't want to know about Brexit unless Katy Perry is involved in Brexit, or unless it's something that my audience would care about. I think pitches are people who are in the publicity world, people who are entrepreneurs, people who are of the community, of the area, being helpful, letting me know about something that my audience would care about, and that's going to make me really excited to tell your story and to get that information out to people who trust us to bring them current and often exclusive and original things.
Yeah. I guess one thing I would mention is I think it's great to be very efficient in your pitches, and to remember the people you're interacting with. Hear from a lot of people. I get a lot of emails, so to really craft your message carefully, and if you have something really good, it shouldn't take like 800 words to say. A lot of the kind of connections I've started with people have just come from very short emails and kind of connecting on something very specific. So
think of the things that make you interested or make you think, oh, this is something that I want to get to right now. The examples that I mentioned earlier, one of them was, in the basic sense, seemed to be like, if you looked at it, you'd go, oh, that's an okay pitch. There's nothing wrong with that. And there wasn't anything wrong with it other than, and it was for a really nice event, but the event is in late October. And it was a big laid out outline of what this event's going to be. Now, I understand everybody's got to plan ahead, but unfortunately, for better or for worse, media gatekeepers don't generally work that way unless they're looking at something really major down the line, like maybe there's a political convention or something like that, where you've got to be planning ahead for months in advance. But if you've got something that you just want a quick take on that's going to get some media coverage, that's too far ahead of time. On the other hand, a really good pitch I got today was probably from somebody who was totally unprofessional. It was a person who I believe may have just been pitching for a group of kids who play soccer in the Washington area. Again, know who your audience is. Our audience, we have a huge audience in Fairfax County, a huge audience in Montgomery County. This happens to be a girls' soccer team. They're 14 and under, I think. They've apparently done really, really well, and they're going to Texas, and they're trying to raise money to get all these kids to go to play in this big tournament. And so that sort of speaks to us as gatekeepers. We go, okay, well, our audience, we have a lot of baby boomers, we have a lot of people who have kids who play soccer or are in sports in the Washington area. And what this woman also did was she outlined it succinctly, what they did, why it was important, why it might be important to our audience, who the coaches were, who all the contacts were, all the really basic information, which you would be surprised how we often don't get that information. And the minute we have to start digging for a lot of things, unless it's a really, really compelling story, we're going to probably move on to something else.
I want to latch on to something you guys said a minute ago, and it's really taken off what you're talking about, this concept of a hook or a time peg, it's been called. I mean, all these different things. Can we dive a little bit deeper into that? You're talking about like with the soccer, the pitch here, but you all have different backgrounds. You're looking for different hooks, different things. Taylor Swift could be creative, could be innovation, transportation. I mean, dive into what a hook is. Like, what is a really good hook? What what causes you to stand out and say, that yes, this is what my readers want, this is what my listeners want, this is what my viewers, I mean, like, what is a hook? I mean, help us understand what that hook means.
I could give an example of like here in DC, the metro's really bad lately. There's been a lot of news.
Lately.
So, like, say you were a transportation startup, that might be a great opportunity for you to pitch how, hey, what we're doing is going to help out all these people who are having issues commuting right now. That's kind of your time to shine and to grab the spotlight.
Right, and you may have something on the drawing board that may not be ready for X amount of months, but you may have the expertise that you can bring to us and just tell us a little bit about it before it actually comes to fruition. And you've, just as Matt said, you got to hit it right when it's hot, because if you don't, unfortunately, this is all, we live in short attention span theater, that even to the point where, related to a hook, even when you think it's timely and you say, oh, that happened yesterday, I'll tell them about this thing, sometimes media have already moved on, sadly, in many cases. But other times there's a story that's going to stick around for a while. I mean, for better or for worse, the Metro story is probably going to stick around for a while, so that you know that there are certain angles related to that you can work while it's in the forefront of people's minds.
On the hook, or just sort of pitching an idea, is there a difference between getting a warm introduction, or just do you guys see a lot of cold pitches come your way? Do you sort of feel them differently and say, this one's cold, I'm not going to respond to it, or you look for a warm introduction?
I feel almost pretty much obligated to write back to someone who does like the warm introduction. If it's coming through someone I know, there's it's a little bit different. But I get so many cold pitches that most of them are not really relevant to me or great fits, that I just don't have time to get back to all of them. So I think if you can have someone introduce you and explain why it kind of makes sense for you to talk to this media person, I think that helps to kind of catch the eye. I see a lot of people throw in the name of like somebody I might know in like the subject line, and if it's the end of a long day when I've been working nonstop on a story about Tesla Autopilot and I'm really tired, that can kind of help to kind of stop me as I'm going back through my inbox and trying to see what I missed. I'll stop at that email and read it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, at the end of the day, it's people and people on both ends of the email. So if you're someone that kind of does make it better. But I think just a personal email in general is better than press release or for media release. Like, and if that's in the subject, I tend to avoid that, or file that for later, because I know that me and 1,000 of my closest media friends have all seen the same thing, and so it's not going to be, super exclusive.
How about pitches that come in through publicists? Are those viewed or weighed differently as opposed to the pitches that come directly from startups?
I think so. But I think it could be good or bad, because there are some publicists that I will answer an email from at 3 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon, because I know that they are always going to give me great stuff. And then there's also some publicity firms or people in town or nationally who just send you the mail. They just everything, like it's, they become almost junk mail. So I think if you're looking to hire a publicist, or you are one, you're working with startups, you need to kind of ask around about their reputation in town.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. If there's somebody that you get trusted and you know that those pitches are usually high quality, then there's nothing wrong with getting the pitches from publicists, and you actually may look forward to them because you know that they usually come through. And then there are the other ones that kind of throw spaghetti against the wall, and they claim that everybody is an expert. That's one of my pet peeves. It's like muffler expert, so and so, blah blah. Really, car mufflers? That's what they specialize. Yeah. Oh, they know everything about car muffler. And the idea of being a specialist or an expert, I can't tell you. There must be 100 different experts that I've heard of that I've never heard of before. Yeah.
But the day you need a muffler expert is a day that somebody should be out there reaching out to you with that expert. And that's again goes back to the idea of a hook. If you have something that's going on, if the world is totally all the mufflers in the world disappear, all of a sudden, then you need that expert to talk about it. And that's the place where the hook makes a difference, either directly or with a publicist. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I agree with that. I'm not a fan of LinkedIn, but the advantage that LinkedIn will do is it'll at least give you the 2 or 3 degrees of separation. So if you have a connection that can get you to the right place so that they can make a connection. I've had more people over the years get stuff to me, and if I know them, if I know what what it weighs, I get it to the right proper news person, and at least get light up their interest. So that's something to consider as well. Whatever your contacts are, if you don't have direct connections, if you don't have the budget for for a publicist, and when you do have the budget, make sure I can picture right now publicists that I know.
We're probably thinking of the same one.
Exactly. They'll call and they'll tell me, and I know that I can depend on what they bring to me. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have the budget for it, use your connections, just like you would do for a job, just like you would do for funding. Use that from the media as well. If there's any, because media people have tons of contacts, and so you'll have, a 2-degree, a 3-degree separation somewhere.
Also, if you have questions, we're going to pass the mic around. I know there's no speakers in here, but we are recording this to be posted on Union and elsewhere and on our site, so we want to make sure we capture everything.
So we started off talking about expertise, like the transportation example you gave, where maybe you were having trouble with the metro, and you say, "Hey, I'm in this space." How do you establish expertise? Are you looking for data saying like, "Hey, this is what we've determined," or how if we think there's something timely and we would love to be quoted and discuss this with you, how do we craft that in a way that's useful for you?
I think what you could do is a little bit of the warm-up approach, because you might be coming from a place that we don't know about, which is totally fine, like this woman who I had no idea about this soccer example I gave, and just succinctly state, hey, you no doubt have been reporting on X, Y, and Z. We actually have somebody in-house here that is an expert on X and Y, and point out maybe either if there's already been, even if it's an obscure blog or some kind of small thing that's been written about them, that's always super helpful. And I think actually that it's become more and more helpful as we go along, just all these just really micro publications that show up that specialize very, very narrowly. That's okay to get that, because then I can get it in front of me as a generalist who's too much of a mile long and an inch deep and go, oh, wait a second, this person does sound like they know what they're talking about. And then maybe if there is a study that you've done, we don't need the whole study, but here's a graph that kind of encapsulates what we can tell you about this issue. We've dealt with this issue, for lack of a better example, of metro or subway systems where they constantly are going through these red signals in San Francisco, say as an example. And then you bring that to us and go, we have somebody who has actually worked on this problem, and they know how they're addressing it in San Francisco, and they can talk about that. And then that gives us another way to tell a story that we don't have to necessarily always go back to the same spokesperson or whoever it is, because we're trying to find out more about the issue, and we're trying to maybe find out, has anybody else had this problem or issue, and what do they do to take care of it, or what do they do to address it?
And social media platforms could be a good sort of validator too. If we then go to your Twitter, if you're the expert and you've been tweeting about this stuff and you have blogs about this stuff and your LinkedIn says,
right,
what you've done in this area, that's really helpful. I mean, sometimes you could be obviously duped, but if we go to your Twitter and there's food pictures and you're tweeting about Netflix, then maybe not, but if you keep that like a professional site about it.
How do you guys feel about Haro, Help a Reporter Out, or any other services like that? Are they helpful, or are they totally whack?
I feel like I may have tried Haro once or something like it, and it didn't really pan out for me. So, I haven't tried much other stuff like that. I mean, there are often times when, I need an expert on a certain, subject area, and I'm really kind of looking for that. For me, at the end of the day, it's often I often go to like academics because they have fewer biases than most people. But yeah, I mean, often sometimes people just email me say, hey, I have an expertise on this. I've been seeing your writing about it. Would you ever be up for a quick chat? And often that's very appealing for me, just because I want to stay in the know and know what's going on.
You had mentioned that there was an event, I believe in October, and that they tried to pitch it to you way too soon. So what is the proper time frame to usually pitch an idea to be covered?
I would say generally unless it's something really huge and it's going to require a lot of logistics, or it's pegged to a very big event. I mentioned, the political conventions, but it could be anything. Maybe there's a big global warming conference that's coming up, or whatever it might be. Then those can be a little bit farther ahead. But I think generally it can't be more than a week. And I think really a better sweet spot is within 48 hours. Now, sometimes you have many times, most of the time, you have more expertise about whatever you're working on than we do, obviously. So you may know of some key event or conference, or somebody's going to release some, say, big report on cyber terrorism or something like that. And the mainstream media, they don't know, except for maybe specialists as part of the mainstream media. So then maybe you can put it on our radar and say, hey, just so you know, this has been in the news, and this is coming up on Friday, and this is Wednesday. This might be somebody you want to talk to. But it's amazing. I mean, I've worked in this business a long time, and that window is tighter and tighter and tighter. And it's really, depending on what it is, it can really be less than 24 hours. I mean, you've got to be that adept, that quick. Certainly, however, there are trending stories, which I don't think are nearly as sensitive to those. And of course, we in the media, we love trending stories. And those don't have to be like, oh, wow, that happened today, and we don't have something ready, and I don't think I can get them anything. But if you know and have seen something that's been occurring or reoccurring, just putting it on our radar within a week or so, I think is helpful. I don't know about how you guys all feel.
Hey, Matt, is that true for you? And I'm pulling you a little bit because I know you're much more niche and longer time frame.
It depends on the circumstances. There are times when 1 or 2 days is fine. If it's a story where that might be very involved and I want to get like our video people involved, sometimes more than a week is good. It really depends on the story, but I don't mind if people pitch me stuff 2 weeks ahead, and I'll just throw something on my calendar and be like, oh, I know this is coming up, and it helps me for planning if I'm interested in the idea, because every once in a while someone will come to me and say, hey, we have this thing going tomorrow, but I'm already bogged down in another story, so I can't do it. So.
And speaking on the event situation, if an event is coming up in October, it might depend on the kind of event. So the kind of media that I'm in, it's more of a lifestyle, more of I don't want to say consumer because we're all consumer, but more of a fluffy, lighthearted kind of media. And so if there is an event that your startup has that might be something to have a great media partnership with, where we work together on something, October is great to let us know about it now. So if you're not looking for just that media coverage, and certain outlets are obviously going to be more able to do that than others. Radio is one that specifically can. Sometimes television stations will partner on a walk or a drive or things that you have coming up, because we're always looking for interesting things to partner with, especially locally in the community.
Can you give an example of an event that you did with a startup?
Not startups specifically per se, but working on something now. So the start of every school year, we go out and do the teacher tour, where we work with Georgetown Cupcake, which could be a startup bakery. It could, where we go out and give cupcakes to teachers as they're getting their classroom all sorted out. And so we're working with an association, responsibility.org, because they talk to teachers. So we've been planning this with them for months. We're going to go out, we're going to bring cupcakes, we're going to have these teacher bags. That's not really necessarily like a media story pitch, but it is an event. It is something pegged in the news cycle for what we do that takes more planning, that would take more time to get involved in.
Yeah, and to that point, we've got web writers that have done lots of stories related to startups, things that are happening around DC area. Obviously, this is a real rich area for a lot of things that are creatively happening here and elsewhere. And what we have found is, while we cover Afghanistan, Iraq, the presidential campaigns, what stories do you think do the best on our website? Often it will be those kind of stories. And so I've seen the way we cover things evolve very, very differently. For example, we have in our newsroom an electronic board that gives us a running tally of what stories are doing well on the web and how they're doing. And what's great about that is there was a time when journalists love to think, well, I know it's the good story, right? Nobody cares about that. Forget about that. That raccoon that was water skiing across that pool, that's ridiculous. Nobody cares about that. And then sure enough, boom, there it is. Does that mean that we lead with that on our website? No, that's not who we are. We're a news station. But we can sprinkle in the fun stuff, and I think that's where you have a lot of open space that you can really do well on. I mean, this woman that writes for us, Rachel Nania, she does a lot of lifestyle reporting, and she gets a little more time to go out and talk to people and get the video and get the pictures and get creative. And what was it? One of them recently was something like, of course, we all in the media love lists, something to the effect of, I think it was 15 local hotels that people just like to hang out and go and have drinks and eat or whatever. Just a simple thing like that. And that killed it that day. And there were other big stories that were happening that didn't necessarily do as well on the web. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't do those stories as our top stories on the air, but I think there's a lot more open area for startups and for just unique story ideas that weren't really there maybe 10 years ago.
Do the same rules apply for, I'm going to call it more non-traditional, more very niche focused sites, whether it be bloggers or, you mentioned web writers, because a lot of content that goes on your websites, other places don't hit air, don't hit press. I mean, do the same rules apply? I mean, is that a more fertile ground for trying to pitch those kinds of stories, or to those folks, again, whether they be niche publications or even within your own organization?
We have tons more stuff that goes on our websites, not only here locally, but our company, countrywide, then go on our stations on the air. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not going to be interesting. The kicker there, you were talking about things that are trending. The things, if your product involves a video of a cat, that it's going to sell. I mean, so think about what is it that interests me as a consumer of media product, and if that use that as a means of crafting the message that you then send out to whoever you're reaching out to. And I would reach out. I have a publicist on my team, and her responsibility, she's a community relations person, part of her responsibility is to get other media entities to cover our media product and our media personalities. And so that's a really tough job. But that's how important we find. So I tell her if we have an anchor who lives in Reston and is doing something in the community, is there a patch.com, is there a local newspaper, is there a blogger that covers things in Reston because there's that local association? That's huge to us. And so I don't the fact that it's a huge entity, I would look at every little entity, especially in the age of social media. I would look at every little entity. Any way you can get the word out. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm gonna stray real quick, it doesn't necessarily have to be about your product either. Brand is incredibly important. And if you can get people aware of your brand, when we spoke on the phone yesterday, I mentioned a food truck operator who had been trying to get in touch with me. And we did a huge live broadcast right before Christmas, tied with Toys for Tots. And he showed up with his food truck full of toys. He was dressed like Santa, and he came out and had collected all these toys. And he got a bit of exposure that way. Well, two things: he got some exposure for his brand, and the second thing is he got my attention. And we've communicated back and forth since, and we've tried to find ways. Can I help him? So aside from the fact that all he was doing was getting exposure for his brand itself, not necessarily for what he did and for his product. And that's something to think about. Can I expose who I am as an expert, or can I expose my brand in some form or another? That's worth trying.
So we're going to switch it up a little bit, and I know we've got some folks that are ready to pitch their stories. Before we do that, I want to really quickly, the four of you, tell me the top three things. What is it that you're looking for? What are the best three pieces of advice you can give someone who's trying to pitch you because they're about to try and you're going to give them feedback? So what are the three things, three tips, three pieces of advice you can give to somebody?
I'll say if you're pitching someone, I would make sure they're a good fit for you. Maybe not relevant like right here, but go to writers who are likely to write about you, just because that's a big advantage. And I would keep it brief, be succinct, And I would, everyone needs to put their business in the best light, but also be accurate. I'm always kind of wary of people who seem to be overstating their claims or a little bit vague. I'm concerned always about trust. So I want to think that I can trust the people I'm going to write about.
I would say consume media before you pitch media, because you need to kind of be aware of the news cycle of the day. I got a ridiculously out of touch pitch the day that Andrews Air Force Base was on lockdown. Like within 10 minutes of them being on lockdown, and like that's not even my beat. And I was like, "What's wrong with you?" So like just be aware. They pitched me about something like completely ridiculously different than Andrews Air Force, but that is sort of an important thing. We were still on the air. Yeah, poor timing. So just be aware. Check Twitter. Check the radio. Check TV before you go out on like a day of pitching. Just because you don't want. And it probably could have been a great pitch. I just really wasn't focused on it. And now that I'm actually saying it out loud, I realize I never actually went back and reviewed it. So, just be aware of the timing of when you're sending things. And also, you're an entrepreneur. You are invested in your business. You're the CEO of your company. But that might not be enough to get interviewed or get whatever. For someone to say, well, I'm the CEO. And you might have the next Apple on your hands. But look at it from our lens of us being like, well, we get hit by a bunch of CEOs every day. So why are you different? Why is what you're doing or what your company's doing changing the world or helping people, as opposed to, hey, you should interview me, or having your publicist say, hey, you should interview this guy or this girl because they're great. So kind of take a step back from it and think about it of somebody who's never heard of you before receiving you, and how what you're doing will help who we're talking to.
Yeah, and related to that, timeliness I mentioned, but also think about, what does this mean to the audience of the media organization or reporter that you are pitching it to? Is this going to be something that's going to resonate with that particular organization's audience? Because that's really what my job is to find interesting stories that my audience wants to either listen to or see on the web. Granted, I might be interested in something, but is that of wider interest to my audience? So that's the first question I ask, is what's this mean to my listenership, my viewership, my core audience? So going back to my original example with the woman who had the soccer team, that's part of my audience. I know that those people are going to be interested in that, or I'm thinking that they probably are going to be interested in it. It's a nice feel-good story. That may not be a good fit for popular mechanics. You just got to know who you're pitching to, and I think that's really critical, because everybody has great ideas, and I think sometimes we need to kind of just step out for a second to the wider audience and say, what will this mean to people at large if I'm pitching this to this audience?
You can always cultivate reporters too, media personalities, anchors, like a tweet, follow on Instagram, do those things, because especially at like the local, regional level, no one's running our Twitter. Like, we're all doing our own thing. And so, if we see you popping up, we see your little square face, and then we're gonna, be at least a little familiar when a tweet comes that has a pitch attached to it, or we get an email from you, hey, I know that name, or that sort of thing. Build a relationship.
Creativity is key when you get 100 things, 200 things a day. Think creatively. And to be honest with you, media entities are very selfish organizations. Like you said, what good will this? How is what you bring to the table going to benefit me and my audience? That's key. Think about that.
All right, we got to start up ready.
Yeah. So now we're going to do kind of a bit of a workshop. We're going to have Ryan Croft Transit Screen kind of give a pitch and pitch to the reporters here, and then you're going to provide feedback on the pitch and kind of say what worked, what didn't work, if you were, if they were pitching to you in like real life.
Stand up, or
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Does it work for the camera?
Hey, you want to sit right here, man?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sit right there. Sit.
All right. Hang on, you're leashed.
Man.
Don't forget you're leashed.
All right. So some of this fabricated. It's been a short notice here, but.
Ryan Croft, I'm co-founder of Transit Screen. We're actually a 1776 invested company. So we provide real-time information primarily on TV displays in lobbies of buildings across DC and across the United States. So what's exciting is that we're going beyond the building, and the information that we provide is really relevant right now because of the safe track problems here in Metro. We put information up like the next train is coming for Metro, it's probably 20 minutes, or buses and bike share, information on car share and Uber. So what's really exciting for us is we're moving outside of the building. One of the highest profile smart cities projects right now in New York City is called Link NYC. Some people might have heard of it, where they're repurposing 10,000 phone booths and they're making them Wi-Fi hotspots. So we're working with Google on that project, putting real-time information on the streets so people know when their buses are coming or what bike shares nearby. So the pitch for you guys is we're bringing this new service, Link NYC competitor, to here in DC. We're going to be putting kiosks on the street so people can see information, local information on the trains and buses, as well as get free Wi-Fi, and they'll be ad-supported. I think it's really timely and really relevant right now, given all the safe track information that people don't really know when buses and trains are coming. Who's in? I think it really depends on...
Is it Shark Tank? I think for 20% it stands there.
Yeah.
We're both reaching for our wallets.
Where's Mark Cuban? I'm looking for Mark Cuban. So clearly I have to know who my audience is. Matt and I are friends. We've talked when he was at the Washington Post. Never did get him to write a story on us, but still working on it for CNN.
What's that relationship line? Jeez.
Like.
I'm seeing hearts now. That's all.
I feel like I should say something here. Yeah, so I was going to bring up Ryan earlier because, I haven't written about him. I thought he was like very savvy in the way he approached me, in that at some point, we started exchanging emails, and it wasn't like a direct pitch. And I think this is a good way to do it if you're trying to build a relationship with someone who seems like the right type of person to write with you. And at some point I agreed to like go to coffee with him, and he came to like a place next door to where I worked, just down the street. And I remember him saying, he's like, I don't have any agenda or any sales pitch here, just kind of wanted to talk and see how I can help you out. And people come at me all the time very much trying to sell things, and it can get exhausting. And it's kind of nice when someone comes to you and says like, how can I help you out? And what that's doing, like I recommend read the book Influence, is kind of creating a social debt in a way. And if you start to build relationships by helping people out in some way, the odds are eventually down the line that's going to pay back. And so I now, any email I get from Brian, I always read and respond, and he's on my radar. So
if we can get this project rolled out.
Yeah. So
I think that's an excellent pitch. I think it's really good. I mean, you've made it relevant to what's going on right now. It has we always say, what's it mean to me? That has that element in it for sure. It's all about, that's what we kind of joke about in our newsroom. Anytime we look at a story, we say, so why do I give a, and I'm talking as an audience member. Well, of course, that's pretty obvious. If it's going to help me, if it's going to somehow let me know what time things are going to happen, and then as you move forward with reporters or whoever, you're going to have to be ready for the questions of, well, how do you actually know when it's going to come, and does Metro know about this, and do you have a relationship with them? And then you get kind of more in the weeds on that kind of stuff. But be ready for those kind of questions as well. People are just going to want to know, hey, how does that work exactly? Because you'll be amazed, and I'm sure you deal with this all the time when you're trying to come up with ideas and invent things and whatnot. Because immediately the skeptic in the room will go, well, how do they do that? How does that work? Who's behind it? So those type of things.
And then lead time too. If this is going to roll out on Labor Day, maybe it's a little bit early to be pitching it, but you could also get it in your minds that, hey, this is coming up.
Right, and you're talking about it at a time when it's kind of at the forefront of people, and people go, oh, you remember that when they were doing all that, maintenance work on Metro, and we talked to Brian, and to your point, like just kind of getting a soft intro. I think that's really smart to do that, because people, you like anybody else, you develop a sense of trust with people, and then when something does pop, then you're ready to take advantage of it right then. Much more so than if that you get that cold pitch that day. Now you're kind of a known entity and somebody who hey, there's some trust built there.
And what will happen at that point is he'll, instead of you reaching out to him, he'll be reaching out to you because he knows that you're a source in that regard.
Right.
And the other, go ahead.
I was just going to mention like launching something on Labor Day. Always be careful around August with so many people on vacation. Mm-hmm. That's the time for an extra long lead time, so that maybe there's a reporter who's perfect to write about you, but they happen to be on vacation, then, the story doesn't get written. So.
Yeah, and to Tommy's point earlier about being cognizant of what's going on in the media that day, that's a great point because, if there's something huge that's happening, no matter all the planning that you've had to roll it out that day, I think just being flexible is really the key. You may have this event that can't be changed because you've booked rooms and whatever at a swanky hotel in the lobby and everything. But for the most part, you can generally be fairly flexible, I think, with certain ideas and just saying, oh, you know what, this is not the day to pitch this, because it does sound a really bad note when something horrible is happening in the world, and then you send out your little happy face, pitch, which probably on a nice summer day would be fine. But unfortunately, what'll happen too is that'll really bury that idea. Like it'll just never have even gotten a read or attention. Whereas you wait and then things slow down a little bit, or your key reporter or tech beat people are there, and then you have a little more time and it doesn't get lost.
I think I can also give you sort of the startup perspective. So we're a pretty small team, 20 employees. My co-founder and I both sort of bear the brunt of a lot of different responsibilities. You wear a lot of hats. It's frustrating sometimes trying to work with the press because, we had a fundraising announcement and TechCrunch reported on it, and we got really good press. But the challenge was we got virtually no information on when was it going to be published, or what information out of the 40 questions that they asked or 20 questions that he asked. So it's kind of a black box for us. Also, we're doing a lot of other things, and we're not really good at it because we don't do it so frequently. But we also know deep down that it's really important. It's vitally important to get press and that branding. So it's challenging on a couple levels from a startup's perspective.
So I'm a huge fan of Transit Screen, and I've been here and I've heard your pitch before, but it wasn't until I saw the one in the lobby that I really got it. How would you guys feel in the pitch if he had a screenshot of what he has? Would that turn you on? Or?
I think that would be great.
Bring it. Yeah,
absolutely.
'Cause I think in your case, it is one screen where you see everything. Like it's so accessible to everyone. You don't have to be in the transit business to understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, but because I do an app too, and I'd wonder if you'd want to see just a screenshot.
Oh, definitely.
In a heartbeat.
Definitely. And it's all about being creative. So if you say, hey, in the demo videos at this Dropbox link, I would avoid putting huge attachments on an email. But I would say, hey, see the demo at this Dropbox link, and
YouTube.
Also, YouTube videos, whatever you might have. And I think too, we're talking about timing a little bit. If you do talk to a media reporter or an outlet about like an exclusive, you can work a little ahead on that. Hey, I'm launching my app on Tuesday. It's going to XYZ. We'd love to give you guys the first look at it. And that's a situation where you can actually throw the timeline back on us and be like, I'd love to hear from you by noon tomorrow because I need to move on. If not, politely say that. Don't threaten. But I see that come in, and I was like, well, what do you mean you're gonna wait? You're gonna move on? Hang on, and then you actually, you kind of bump to the top of the list because we don't want to miss out.
How do you plan that with other media outlets, though? So if I give someone an exclusive, CNN's got the exclusive for our Series A launch, or Series A raise. How do you talk to everyone else and sort of manage that? Because if Monday at 9 a.m. CNN's article's coming out, I see Google does this so well. Like it'll be 9:06, 9:12. It's VentureBeat, TechCrunch, everyone else.
So that's a conversation you have, and I would think if it's a huge, like, groundbreaking announcement like that, it might be worth it for you to work with a publicist to kind of shepherd it through. Yeah. But if you have someone who is like the holy grail hit, right? Like if your reporting on it is going to make 15 other outlets cover what he wrote on, have that, but then also have like your next tier people and say, well, I know that CNN ran this, but have little sheltered and siloed pieces of the story. But we didn't tell them that it actually does this, this, and this. And hey, you want to get your Metro Times, like kind of parcel out different pieces of the same story.
And the question becomes, what are you trying to accomplish with the media? Because the places that you've mentioned have been trying to get it in front of people who are interested in tech, possible investors. Is that what you're interested in? If that's the case, then that's how you pitch it. If you're interested in getting the audience, people who would be users, interested in it, and the reason I say that is because you started listing out the number. My newsroom could care less that you're ad supported. Right. That's not important. they could care less unless the CEO juggles or has some kind of an interesting has an interesting story. There you go. But there are a lot of shops that have a CEO and 20 people. So what's interesting about that? What's interesting to the consumer is what's interesting to the consumer. What do I care about? This is all I care about because it'll get me somewhere fast. That's what you want to pitch. I find interest in what you said for two places with a town like ours. Number one is for the locals, but also for tourists. Is there a peg? An interest where tourists who are coming in who are looking for bike share might have interest. How could that word be reached? How could you get that word out? So a company like ours would be interested in the story for the locals on TV, and it might have greater legs online if people are looking for, I'm traveling to Washington, how do I get around? Well, I'll start looking for these kiosks. So that's the other, and part of your pitch. What else is of interest to possible consumers?
I want to interject one thing, and these guys have said it in certain ways, but I want to make sure we're clear about it. When you're pitching a media company, you're not pitching the media company per se. You're pitching the people that they're serving. So when you're trying to come up with a hook, you're trying to figure out who they're writing or broadcasting or whatever for. That's who you've got to convince, if that makes sense. You're always, that's who they're trying to serve. So you're going to try to serve them by serving them. So that's a point that I want to make sure you get hammered in.
One more thing, a little detail you're doing very well. You're wearing the branding.
I love
So now I know, I'm familiar with that. So when I see that email or when I see your screen, I'm like, oh, that's the guy. They're here. I should reach out to him because there's, what do I need to know? So
you got to live the brand.
Absolutely.
I loved it coming up. I grinned from ear to ear because of that. It was great. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Somebody else want to give it a shot?
Who's up?
Somebody pitch a story. Oh, come on up. Good.
So is this good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so my name is Reed Bennett. I'm the founder of HeroHomes.com, former Marine Corps infantry officer, and it's related to this. So I know where there's $28 billion of untapped, unrecognized community development, economic development buying power, and we need your help to promote this to the 45,000 vets that are in the DC area. Essentially, we're a Zillow.com, if you know that, or a Realtor.com for military vets, focused on VA loans, which is a no money down home buying power. And what the vets don't know is we can use it to buy and be resident landlords in duplexes, 3s, 4s, and 5s. So we think we can anchor the great American renewal, and the problem is simply an information disconnect. We've invented nothing other than recognizing that this is there and that we need to get to vets and tell them about it. So could you give us a hand and put us on the air?
The first thing is document. If it's no product, if it's a story, it's you tell it once, and that doesn't have long legs. I don't know if you would go beyond that. But if it's a product that does that helps communicate people, that we can put people in touch with, it probably has greater legs than just one story.
That may also be, Facebook bait too. You might want to just post a blog that's the key to the economic renewal lies in money not given to veterans, period. Buy $30 worth of ads on that, targeted at the right places. That will build a groundswell, which will also get us interested in it. And also, X number of $1 million the veterans don't know they can have, period. That's your subject line. Because I think we would all be like, wait, what? We would all read into that and click that.
Or tell one individual story. That's also important as well.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect for you. It's people love the personal human stories. Go find some guy that you helped out or somebody who's having a really tough time, and people always connect with that kind of thing. So I would try to sell it that way because it's very human.
This is a military town.
And you can send different personal stories, different individual people to different outlets. And so you might get replication on the same story, but a different story.
Right, exactly. I think that's a good way to do it. The humanizing it, because you don't want to take it too big. You want to get it down to, it's kind of like...
Believable.
Yeah. One example that's often used in media, the starving kids of Africa. You you know it's horrible intellectually, you can't stand the idea of it, but until you see that one image or that one vignette that's a powerful 2 to 3 minute story about that family or that child, that for whatever reason brings it home to all of us. So if you find that person who person or persons or family or whatever it is who has kind of this, yeah, this actually worked for us, we had no idea that we could do this, and here we are, then that resonates with, again, audience. Military is a big part of our audience. Just as an example, one of the biggest stories we had on the web was just a kind of a basic story about ways that people in the military could work from home, because you're moving from place to place a lot, and you got to readjust and find a new job and all that kind of thing. And we kept looking at our web metrics, and that was constantly doing well for like weeks. And so we would bring it back because we just figured, well, people were interested in it. And so there again, to your point about repeating the story, it doesn't have to just be a one-time deal. It can be something that gets picked up more and more. And the key, I think, is just if it gets picked up by 1 or 2 media organizations, then it's going to start getting picked up by broader, wider, dispersed media organizations.
Does this strike you as something that's, free media-able in a sense?
I think so. Yeah, I think anytime you're talking about helping the military, I think that you've got a pretty good edge on a lot of other things.
Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
You mentioned about how a couple media outlets run it and then it can kind of grow from there. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Because there's this air of exclusivity that, hey, we broke it, but there's also some will be followers. And how do you kind of build, if you get 1 or 2, are you saying like as seen in here and here? Or how do you let the person you're pitching know that you've got some momentum, or do you not?
No, I think you do. You play on that probably more now than ever. And I think, as much as every news organization wants to have an exclusive, I think what we're talking about here, you don't really necessarily want that much exclusivity, because you want to build your brand. You want to get it out there. So, you might find the trusted organization that you really like or the reporter that you worked with before and say, I'll give you kind of first dibs on this, but just to let you know, I am letting some other news organizations know about it. And then sometimes that can be helpful, because then the news organizations will go, well, I heard they're going to do something, and then we're going to do something at the same time. We had one just recently where it was just happened to be a documentary about something that Rolling Stone was going to do something about it, and the fact that we knew that they were going to do something about it, it wasn't going to be a huge widespread story, but gave us a little more impetus to say, well, it's going to be out there, so maybe we'll do this story now rather than wait on it. And then, looking for who you want to do the story right the first time, which hopefully is most news organizations, but there's a lot of bad ones too. And then that's going to, other news organizations are going to go, well, that's a trustworthy news organization. That's, CNN, that's WTOP, whoever it is. And they're going to say, this story is legit. We're going to pick it up, and we're going to start doing it, in a variety of places. And again, it doesn't have to be, we're kind of like a mainstream news organization, but it can be much more niche oriented. The ones that that really know your type of product, but it has some kind of, like we talked about, the hook, then it gets picked up by a couple more, and before you know it, you get picked up by a whole bunch of news organizations. On the flip side, if you start with the wrong news organization, like there's certain ones that I know of that are kind of thin, that kind of go from, oh yeah, there's that, I'm on crack headline, to, was that backed up anywhere in the story? No, it wasn't. Then I'm less trustworthy of those websites, and I'm not going to pick it up, or we're going to have to do a lot more work and really check it out ourselves. Whereas the ones that we know are trustworthy, we're like, okay, they probably did their homework. This is probably a legit thing, and maybe we want to match it, is what we sometimes call it, which is just we go and interview the same people, or we pick up what was already there and give that news organization the credit and say, hey, kudos to them, they had it first.
And I can speak to on the lifestyle end. With radio, there's competitive morning shows in town. So if you call me and say my competitor just had me on the air, I'd be like, well, good. Hope that was fun. Because some media, we don't share. We don't really play well with each other. And I can't really speak for a glossy, a Capital File versus Washington Life versus Washingtonian, but I gotta believe that they're kind of the same way. That if you had a whole page in one of those, their competitors probably wouldn't. But you should definitely take what you can get, and you should, just keep that in mind. Don't make it don't let us know that you worked with the others in that lifestyle kind of space.
I guess the final thing I ask, has anybody seen that I Should Have Married John Clark ad a ways back? My wife has, so I'm going to take a selfie with John Clark and send it to her.
What the hell? I'm not sure what just happened. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Let's give these guys a round of applause.